Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now I'm finally back at home, and yesterday whilst I was on my way to airport actually, and that entire thing was just an absolute mess. Our flight ended up getting delayed and all that other cool stuff. Doesn't matter now, but yesterday we finally got Spot's deep dive come out. So let's break it down. And first, before anything, I must say that I'm slightly biased against Spot, because Spot has been the character that I have been wanting to get added to the game for a very, very long time. And so far, from what I see, he does look very good. As in, like, I'm very confident that Spot is the type of champion. If he translates well enough into the game and his mechanics are practical, then I would absolutely love to want to play, and I think he would be amazing for a ton of stuff. Right, that being said, let's break down his abilities. So, he's going to be working on this spot mechanic. He does seem like quite an annoying defender as well, with his ability to basically quite frequently trigger something that's very similar to a 5-second falter. As in, every time you hit him, he has about 20% chance to gain a spot. He has other ways of getting more spots offensively, but for defensive purposes, basically, every time you hit him, he has about 20% chance to gain a spot. And that means that on average, in every combo, he's going to gain one. He also gains spots by throwing special attacks, regardless whether they connect or not. And then when he reaches 5, next time you hit him, he's going to basically force you to miss for next 5 seconds, which is going to be quite troublesome. So we'll see how he works out as a defender. Maybe it just sounds bad and isn't as bad to fight against, but there definitely could be some tricky bits there. Offensively, first thing that we need to note is that obviously he's going to have miss mechanic. I really hate making these comparisons, but judging by the frequency, he's kind of like a weird miss champion. He will definitely trigger his miss more often than, let's say, Ebony Maw. Not as often as Kitty, Pride, or Ghost, but he can maintain that miss mechanic for quite a long time. So I think he's going to be also quite aggressive offensive champion. His level 1 is going to be granting him buff immunity, which in reality, level 1 doesn't really fit in your rotation, so I don't think you're going to want to do this most of the time, but it is there. It is kind of cool thing that you can place a debuff on yourself, because that will enable you to willpower heal as well, which is kind of cool. And he has a pre-fight, which can let any science champion place that buff immunity on himself. And that also unlocks more willpower healing for pretty much any science champions. It will trigger every time you knock the opponent down for 3 seconds, and hey, it's just a nice way to mitigate a little bit of extra help and obviously have an extra utility. Now, offensively, he also has access to Infuriate, which is really amazing mechanic, as well as Raptures, as so he is another Rapture-based champion, and then he has quite large amounts of burst damage as well. Let's move on further. So here are his spot mechanics. As I said, every time he gets hit, 20% chance to gain 1 spot. This is purely a defensive ability. At 5+ spots being struck by a basic attack grants 100% potency, untouchable passive, causing incoming attacks to have 100% chance to miss for 5 seconds. Pause during his special attacks. And also, whenever you strike the opponent, you pause this for 0.3 seconds. So if you're managing to be aggressive with the help of Infuriate, you're going to be maintaining this for much, much longer than 5 seconds, at which point you're basically causing everything opponent does to miss. And every time they do miss, they also get a Rapture on themselves. Every time you strike them, untouchable, you place a Rapture on them. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how offensively quick he is, but it definitely has a ton of value right here, right now. I think it's no exaggeration to say that the phasing mechanic are what makes Ghost as powerful as she is, what makes Kitty as powerful as she is, and Spot, I'm not saying that he's going to be Ghost or Kitty, but what I'm saying is he's going to have a lot of benefit from this 100% miss ability. Also, if he's struck while recovering from a special attack, you remove 1 spot and he can't gain spots for 4 seconds. But I don't think that in itself will be enough to kind of prevent him from going invisible when you're fighting against him. And here we can see how those spot mechanics are going to look like. Now, this portal block is going to be one of the most interesting things about him. So when on holds his block, he gains 8,800 block proficiency, which is a massive, massive amount of block proficiency. Bonus per spot. Now, that means his block proficiency is going to go absolutely bonkers, like 88,000 if you have 10. So yeah, that's going to be quite crazy. Or like 9. And then after 5 seconds, he opens a portal to the spotted dimension in front of him, while on his defending portal blocks activate immediately. This ability is not affected by ability accuracy. Portal block grants the following effect for 2 seconds. On is locked in place, so he kind of roots himself and gains 1 spot when the opponent strikes into the block. That is going to be your main way to get spots offensively with that portal block. At 10 spots, On's block proficiency returns to 0, the block proficiency bonus. But that doesn't matter, because at that point you want to let opponent hit you in order to trigger untouchable. Also, 20% chance per spot to resist heavy and unblockable attacks is also really cool, because if you can block unblockables and then the rest of the time you can force them to miss. So he looks like he's going to be very good unblockable counter as well. And Disorient is his weakness. His abilities cannot really trigger whilst Disorient is active. Here is a bad quality picture. I did notice that is how the portal block is going to look like. And here we can see that whenever opponents miss, you inflict the Rupture. They are missing there, and you also have access to Infuriate. The Infuriate only lasts for 2 seconds, but it refreshes every time you strike the opponent whilst they're untouchable. So basically, you're going to have it on for quite a long amount of time whenever you are untouchable yet again. And then, here we go. While untouchable, he's also becoming stun immune, which can be useful, but it's one of those things we do have much better stun immune abilities in the game. It might be quite tricky to time it. The best thing from this ability, I suppose, is it would let you try and be super aggressive and not worry about getting parry stunned. I mean, if in a pinch, you probably can use this to bypass encroaching stun and a few other things, but again, we do have better options for that. When an incoming attack would miss, you inflict a very short Rupture, dealing 2,000 damage. And that's fair enough. Landing a hit pause is untouchable for 0.3 seconds. We already discussed that. And inflicts Infuriate debuff, reducing offensive ability accuracy by 60%. Again, that can be quite detrimental to opponents. Incoming attacks from the opponent that make contact with on inflict Rupture debuff, dealing 781 physical damage over 10 seconds. This is kind of like a longer Rupture that you place, but it only scales with base attack rating. But these Ruptures do very little damage, so they're just there to charge your level 2 realistically. So here is your pre-fight ability. Again, you can apply it to any science champion, and then they can gain buff immunity whenever they knock opponents down, which does have quite a bit of application. So I do think it's a very nice, versatile tool to come to the game in near future. And here again, this is just a showcase of that buff immunity. But let's go over his special attacks. So special 1 is where he himself can gain his buff immunity for 10 seconds. If he uses special attack at 10 spots, it gains it for much longer, 20 seconds. And at that point, it kind of becomes sustainable. But it doesn't really flow in his kit. If you're being honest, his rotation is basically spam level 2s. Level 1s seem kind of like a bit of a waste, and level 3 also kind of seems unnecessary. So I do not think that he will be used much for his buff immunity, because in order to work with this buff immunity, he would have to forego quite a lot of his damage. So I'm not, again, trying to draw a comparison in between character quality overall, but it feels kind of like a situation of Mangog, where Mangog has a ton of utility on level 1, but you never really want to throw that level 1, because then you forego most of your damage. And luckily, Spot has a ton of utility in the rest of his kit, that I do see him being a very good champion without the buff immunity, because it's definitely not kind of cooked in his kit in a very, I don't know, practical manner, in a sense. you'll be slowing yourself significantly down if you ever use this, basically. And also, while active, each time Quinn is immune to a buff, inflict Rapture debuff dealing. I assume it's meant to say whilst Untouchable is active. Inflict a Rapture debuff dealing 781 physical damage. Again, you know. Oh no, it's just during the special attack. Fair enough. Fair enough. Just some more Raptures. Again, I don't think it's particularly needed there. Now, the level 2 is going to be where the rest of the big damage comes from, because you can see every time on every hit, you're going to be dealing a burst of Rapture damage to your opponent based on how many Raptures you have applied since your last special attack or since the beginning of the fight. And this is only with 20, and each hit inflicts like extra 6.4k, but you can access Furies that should be allowing this level 2 burst to scale with Synergies and with his signature ability, and obviously you can make this 6k burst into like 15k burst if you have like 50 charges here on spot. So his level 2 is going to have a lot of damage. As on activation, if on is untouchable, you can also inflict physical vulnerability, lowering opponent's physical resistance by a lot. That is a very powerful physical resistance, not physical vulnerability buff. And again, if you launch it at 10 spots, which is ideal, you inflict it for 20 seconds, but you don't have to, because the main purpose of this is to have it on during your level 2. And each hit deals a burst of, here you go, physical damage based on how many stacks of Rapture you have applied. So this is the money maker. This is where you do your damage. And level 3 has a very cool animation, but it really doesn't matter too much. It kind of like gets you to 10 spots and whatnot, but you're not going to want to do level 3 too much. Unless it's a very, very long fight. In very long fights, level 3 will increase the duration of your Raptures by 100%, which can be useful, especially with those small, high damage Rapture debuffs that you will be inflicting whenever opponent miss. So then, fair enough, but in pretty much any reasonable fight, you don't need that level 3, which is something that I like. I never like when champions rely on a level 3 in their rotation, personally. So I'm very happy that he has a very straightforward, just get to level 2 and nuke it type of playstyle. Much better than all of these champions with, you know, you need to throw level 1, level 3, level 2, and all that other stuff. Don't like that. I don't think it's so practical. I like when they keep it kind of simple and straightforward. Now, the signature ability does look quite important. I do think that the signature ability is going to be needed to elevate him as a damage dealer, because that Fury that at max sig is going to be like over 2000 is very potent. So there are basically two abilities. Whenever you punish opponents after your portal block, you're going to be inflicting physical damage. That's fine. That's kind of like overseer part. But whilst untouchable, at the strike of an opponent while they have attacks that strike the opponent while they are performing a heavy attack or recovering from a special attack grant on a Fury passive, increasing attack rating by 2000 for 7 seconds. That is a quite massive Fury and relatively easy to get it on. And if you can time this with your level 2, that will significantly improve that burst damage I think that you're doing. So I do think the signature ability is going to be quite important for Spot. And when it comes to synergies, there are a few interesting ones. I don't think that this one is particularly impressive or important to any of the champions. You know, Mr. Negative can gain a fatigue debuff, which is fair enough, or Kingpin starts with 1 rage debuff. He literally has a synergy that's twice as good, but you know, it's neat. It's nothing crazy. Spot starts the fight with 2 spots. Again, it's neat. It's nothing insane. You gain spots quite quickly and easily. Now, this synergy I think is quite good for America Chavez, where lower opponent's energy resistance by 15% for each unique parallel dimension and buff on the opponent. That means that even with champions that have no buffs, you're able to reduce their energy resistance by 45%, but the opponents will have plenty of buffs. America Chavez is going to be able to hit insanely hard. I am actually very curious to see how hard America Chavez hits with this synergy. Also for Wong, 20% combat offensive power rate, whilst you have 3 active spells or fewer, I think is very, very good synergy, because he's one of pain points of Wong is a very long setup, which involves getting to plenty of special attacks and then activating spells, and this kind of helps with that. So I do think it's a fairly decent, good synergy for Wong to have. Also, Spot Portal blocks that block basic attacks, Grand Spawn, and non-stacking Fury, increasing attack rating by 20% for 6 seconds. It's neat, it's nice, it's not crazy. I think it's decent synergy. This synergy could be very, very, very good for Black Cat. Special attacks gain an additional 15% critical rating for each 100 hits on Black Cat's combo meter. I think this synergy can definitely be very useful to increase Black Cat's damage output even more if it's needed, but it's going to be interesting. Spidey synergy is kind of useless, because Spidey is kind of useless. And when Untouchable starts, inflict a 40% town debuff for 7 seconds. I mean, it's nice, but you have Infuriate that kind of do very similar things, so I don't think it's particularly needed in most cases, in my opinion. And this one with Mysterio, this is just crap, really. 10% Raptor debuff potency, it's nothing major. Also, Mysterio gain 1 chemical gas when a hit misses Mysterio, and that only happens after you throw... Well, you only offensively you can use Mysterio's miss is after level 2, whilst you're charging your heavy attack. And this synergy has a cooldown, and Mysterio has a synergy with Penny, which makes him not use his chemical gas anyways. So basically what I'm trying to say is this synergy is kind of shit. It's neat maybe, but not needed. And this last one is another synergy with Mephisto, which is kind of funny because Mephisto has like 30 good synergy. Anyways, Spot's block portal gains a flat 10% chance to resist unblockable and heavy attacks per spot. I don't think it's needed at all. With this, you basically need 4 spots to guaranteed resist unblockable. Without it, you need 5, so basically same stuff. Mephisto landing basic attacks pauses the duration of Aura of Incinerate for 0.2 seconds. I think this could be very interesting for Mephisto, but it's already hard to squeeze his synergies in an offensive team. Mysterio definitely needs some of his synergies moved to his base kit, in my opinion. And Magic, while the opponent has 0 power, gain a Fury buff, increasing attack rating by 15%. It's kind of bad, considering that Magic has much, much better synergies with like Morningstar that increases her crit damage, and Guillotine 2099 that increases attack, while the Limbo is active for far more, so I don't think this is particularly significant. So the best synergies here, I suppose, would be for Mephisto, and for Black Cat, and for America Chavez and Wong, that are all interesting, but not, well, I mean, these could be quite powerful. Anyways, so that's Spot. What do I think about Spot? Spot looks very, very good. I do like him a lot. I do think he has all the potential to be a very powerful champion because of how effortlessly, seemingly, he will be able to abuse his untouchable mechanic. As long as he remains super aggressive, he can maintain it probably for like 10-15 seconds at a go, at which point he's going to be inflicting a lot of damage. He's awake in high sig, there's going to be a Fury buff. So I can easily see him being quite useful in many situations. And offensively, most importantly, quite fast in a sense. Because he only needs his level 2, and then there's a big nuke. And it's also not that at that point the fight kind of starts, because we have a ton of champions who get to their level 2 and, then things start happening. For instance, Immortal Abomination, you activate your level 2 and then you start stacking poisons, and then eventually afterwards, you get to more and more damage. With this, it's basically level 2 and kind of CGR-esque type of effect. Obviously, the reason CGR is so good at nuking things down is because he gets to his level 2 really quickly thanks to power gain buff. Now, Spot doesn't have any of that, which is one of my biggest worries here, because he doesn't have any kind of like quicker access to that level 2, and even if he did, it wouldn't work as well because he needs that whole Rapture placing dance in order to do maximum damage. So it's going to be very interesting to see where he lies, what kind of damage we're talking about, but realistically, he could be one of the very few science champions that is kind of like a straight up level 2 nuke type of guy, because we don't really have much of that in science class. Science class is typically one of the slower classes that focuses on either damage over time or building up debuffs and then doing some things, or ramping up a bit or inflicting damage in different ways. This guy seems more in line of a, I don't know, even a cosmic character or a tech champion or something, where you build up to your level 2 and you do a ton of damage, which I'm quite excited for. And obviously the whole phasing thing and so on and so forth, Infuriate, seems very interesting. So I'm actually quite hopeful for Spot. It looks very good, but we're going to have to wait and see till we get more information, more videos, more footage, more realistic damage numbers, so on and so forth. Let me know what you guys think about him, and I'm going to get off to the next video. My voice is breaking down, so I'll catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the